Hi, and welcome to another session of Vitality Chats. This afternoon, we have the honor of talking to Dr. Robert LaRusso, who's been in practice for approximately 43 years and has a wealth of experience and also has one of the most unique practices of any practitioner I have ever met and known. We're really looking forward to him to sharing his wisdom, his brilliance, and his inspiration with us today.
Yeah, welcome, Robert. We're happy to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time to join us. And if you wouldn't mind kind of starting in the beginning, maybe how you got into chiropractic, a little bit about your background.
Well, it's so great to be with you two guys, which are an inspiration to all of us. And anybody watching this should be in awe of what you guys have accomplished and what you guys have done and still accomplish. So it's an honor to be a part of your program and what you have done and created. So it's really a major honor after all these years. So it was interesting. I really didn't know much about chiropractic when I was first, out of school. I have a bachelor's of science in biology and a minor in chemistry. And of course, at the time you think medical school or this or that, but that kind of got derailed to some degree. So I was actually had applied to podiatry school out in Ohio, in Cleveland, and I got rejected. So it was a very, very sad day. I got that letter of rejection. So my dad's best friend was a medical doctor, and I grew up in his house, basically. I spent a lot of summers at his house down here in the Jersey Shore. Took my first steps in his house. So my dad called me up. He says, Dr. Caputo's nephew, Georgie's in. Now, I knew Georgie for many years, being associated with their family. So Georgie had just graduated from Palmer. So he says, Georgie's in Jersey with his mom, staying at his uncle's house, and he wants to talk to you. So normally you would say, like, I don't want to do this, this happened, that happened. But I says, Pop, okay, we'll go talk to Georgie. So we drove from where I lived up to Belleville, New Jersey, and Georgie was there. And like I said, we knew each other from the summers. So he brought me upstairs in his uncle's house, and he had this table there sitting there, and his mom. He says, I'm going to show you what chiropractic is about. Because I tell you, Georgie, I don't really even know how to pronounce the word, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
So, so anyway, he showed me what it was. It looked really interesting. Being a sports person and, touching the body, this was very cool stuff. So he introduced me to chiropractic then, and then we met a few times, talked a little bit. And I said, George, with my background with biology, and chemistry, I said, this could really be a good fit. So he said, but the only one thing is you only can apply to one school. Go apply to Palmer, because the other schools don't have accreditation at this point, but that's where you're going to go. Right. So I says, all right, I'll do that. So I put my application in, got a little postcard in the mail, stated that you can't be accepted for the October class, but if you check this box, you can get in for you will consider you for the January class. I did that, and so many days later, I got my acceptance letter back, and that little postcard said you're accepted for the January 1978 class. Wow. And I still have it, actually. I still have the little postcard. So that's where I started, and I was very I procrastinated a lot about a lot of things, but for some reason I didn't procrastinate about this. I flew out to Iowa. I checked the school out. I looked for apartments. I flew back again, finally getting an apartment, right down the block from the school. I didn't have a car. My mother took me to South Orange, New Jersey, to the bank to get a loan out for 10 grand, and it's kind of all started from there. And from the moment I started, I don't know what happened to me. I started to really love it. It just fit like like the glove, so to speak. So
that's the interesting thing about chiropractic. You hear that a lot. I mean, it happened to me. I know it happened to you and people we've interviewed before. It's like all of a sudden you get there, somebody tweaks that little button inside you, and you're there, and you just don't look back. You just move forward. It just kind of moves through you.
Yeah, there's a kind of just a knowing when you're in the right place. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So go ahead, Robert.
It was just very exciting when I started, and just everything seemed to fit, and I had all this energy to start doing stuff, which was like, it wasn't me to some degree.
So we know the kind of things that you're doing now, Robert, with chiropractic, but you certainly have had a vast array of experiences since you went to Palmer. So if you wouldn't mind sharing some of those unique experiences, certainly at your time in Eastern Europe and the people that you took care of, would you share some of that with us?
Well, I found through the years to keep a really open mind about what I was doing. Sometimes you get in practice and you think you're the only one on the island, in yourself and practicing, and you don't have any association with other people or other things. So you kind of stay within yourself. And I found that through the years to keep an open mind, to educate yourself. And a significant, I used to be the chiropractor for, 6 or 7 high school football teams, going out there and doing lectures and talking and getting involved in a whole bunch of different things. I was, in 2 locker rooms at one point at sometimes, and, just Saturdays, Sundays, just working and getting so much experience, thinking I was going to be a sports chiropractor. And so that started to happen somewhat. And I almost to get with the Jets, but then they had a chiropractor, plus Dr. Nichols was the chiropractor for the Jets. He didn't allow any other associations, with the team at that point in the 80s. I got to treat Rich Kotite, and I got to know him real well. He's one of the coaches for the Jets. And so, I thought I was going to be a sports chiropractor for many years, but that never seem to work out. It just kind of hit a dead end here with the New Jersey Nets, with the Giants, with the Jets. It just kind of, seemed to be ending to some degree. And then I moved to New Jersey, and then I had gotten divorced there, and I kind of found somebody else, and we got married. And I used to treat her, we see 100 people a day, 80 people a day. And I used to treat my wife. She had a ceiling fall on her head, my second wife, ceiling fall on her head. So her cervical spine was pretty much like this. I'd come home and adjust her Gonstead, adjust her this, adjust her that, do everything I thought I needed to do. And I would kill her. You didn't get it. You didn't get it. You didn't get it. You didn't get it. I says, okay, I didn't get it. So anyway, and I started looking for things, and because I knew I had to do some type of cranial work. And when in school, I had taken SOT with Dr. Hagen, but that never resonated with me at the time. And then I became, just a Palmer grad and doing my normal adjusting, which worked. I mean, it was very, it worked. So I was getting results, and things worked the way they were working. And then, again, as I said, we had a guy come and measure my carpet one day. He saw my table sitting in the house, and he says to me, what do you do? I said, I'm a chiropractor. If I could be any help to me. He interrupts me. He says, listen, I don't need your help. I went to see this guy in North Jersey, and they carried me into his office. I said, well, what'd they do? What'd he do? He says, well, he did this. He stuck his fingers in my mouth, worked with my head, did all this stuff. I don't know what he did, but I'm a big husky guy. He goes, and they carried me in, but I was able to walk out. So I literally grabbed a napkin out of my pocket, and I said, which I probably wiped my mouth with at some point. And I said, what's the guy's name? Rich Collins. He says, okay, I write it down. I call him up. I go watch. He says, yeah, you come up and watch me work. So I went to watch him work, and the first patient stands there, and she says, and he's standing there, and she says, he got me pregnant. So she says, I said, really? I said, well, what? She says, no, my husband got me pregnant, but he's the one that really helped me get pregnant. So I watched him work, and I never saw anything like this before. He was doing kinesiology, he was working on the cranium, all this stuff, SOT involved, blocking, and I had no idea what he was doing. Came home, my wife said to me, she goes, did you go see him work? I said, yeah, he gave me a headache. She goes, he adjusted and gave you a headache? I said, no, I just couldn't understand what he was doing. So my head was spinning, and my head's hurting. So I don't get headaches, and my head's really hurting. Anyway, he told me about Dr. Ferrari's work, Carl's work in Brooklyn, doing the neural organization technique, applied kinesiology. I see right in Brooklyn, so I said, it's like my own backyard. I went to see Carl, watched him do his thing, and got hooked, and started taking applied kinesiology. Eugene Charles did this, got my hours in that. And
Robert,
then
how many years was that after you had graduated from Palmer?
15 years, about 2000, actually 19. 95, 94, 95.
I just kind of want to interject a little bit about that for the people listening. It's like, this is really important for us to understand that this is a journey. Chiropractic is a journey. And for many people who, who start off, they think it's going to look a certain way, like Robert did, if I was going to be a sports chiropractor, but being open to the changes that come into your life and the people that come into your life and going with that is really part of what brings us success and what keeps us interested and keeping in the profession. So if you find yourself in a situation where it feels a little stale, or go out and reach out to other chiropractors like what Robert did and get hooked up again and find your inspiration. So continue, Robert, about this. I know this is a really big part of your life when you studied with him.
Well, I realized I was doing my regular techniques from chiropractic. I was kind of hitting a wall,
Right.
and I realized I was doing things, but then it started to become very rote. And I wasn't getting the results I really wanted because I'm results oriented. It just, something was not clicking. So that's why even with my second wife at the time, I was trying to get the and nothing was happening. So I started looking for stuff and looking for this, and this kind of came in, and I took, not want to say advantage of it, but I showed the steps to look into it and see if it resonated, and it started resonating with me.
Awesome.
So then I started doing the work, and then let's see, I did it for a long time. I started teaching it. I did seminars around the country. That kind of slowed up a little bit, so I didn't pursue that, but I just kept on studying and working. Things got pretty slow for a while, but I just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it. So I went from seeing 80 or 90 people a day, probably to seeing, I don't know, 10, 12, 14 people a day.
That's huge. Yeah, that's.
So I must say that my second wife helped me out financially a lot, when you have all those bills and you're only taking in 1/3 of what you really should be doing. So, but I just kept at it for some reason. I can't say why I did it, but I just kept on learning from it and learning, studying and studying and studying. And I knew something would come along to help me as time went on. What it was, I have no idea, but I just kept on working at it. Then I was treating a Down syndrome boy, and I was co-treating him with a woman in Oklahoma. Her name is Phyllis Libby. So we talk on the phone, and Phyllis would gab all the time. I get 5 words in with her, about little Matthew, and she would just be talking. We've been on the phone for 2 hours talking about stuff. And so she had a friend. Phyllis was with the institutes in Philly, with Doman.
Yeah.
So she was working.
Yeah.
Yep. So Phyllis was working down in Honduras with all the disabled kids there with disabilities. She had a friend that was working in Eastern Europe that was Polish. So I called Phyllis one day. I said, "Listen, I don't know what the hell it is that you do, but I have to find out what is it that you do." She goes, "Well, come down to Oklahoma." And I flew down there, and she had a friend with her in the car. Her name was Bojena. So we sat and talked for 4 days. I adjusted them both. And then after 4 days, flew home, and Bojena lived in Philly. So she was working in Eastern Europe at the time, being Polish, because she spoke, of course, fluent Polish. She spoke Ukrainian, she spoke Russian. So that's what she did. She worked on all these kids there for about 20 years, 22 years at the time. So, and she would bring certain practitioners in with him. One, I forget what her name is at this point, but she was a pretty well-established pediatric practitioner here in the States. I just can't remember her name right now. So she calls me up. She says, "I want to bring you a kid from Ukraine, from the Donbass area." So that's where all the fighting was taking place. Not totally at the time, just a little bit. It's very right next to Russia, with borders with Ukraine and Russia. So she brings her in to see me, and so I told her I'm going to see her two times for that day. She says she's okay, but so I finished the first visit, and I'll see you in about a couple hours. She goes, "Well, I'm not sure if we could come back." So I said, maybe to myself, I'm going to do something wrong. She goes, "No, what happens is that when we feed Yunya, we put the spoon in her mouth, and she doesn't take it out. Like, we can't pry it from her mouth." So it's for hours she holds on to the spoon. Very brain injured, wheelchair, the whole bit. I says, "I can fix that. Don't worry about it. I can take care of that." So I go in my kitchen, I grab a spoon, I put her in hand, do the kinesiology, do my NOT stuff, which because incorporates SOT, acupuncture,
Mhm.
CMRT, which Carl and kind of put it all in to the program. So not thinking anything of it. I did my thing. They left. They sure enough came back, and I didn't think about it. So I treated her, and then about a month later, she calls me up. She goes, "I want you to come to Poland with me." So that was in October of 2010. So I says, okay. So we worked out the financial end of it, all that stuff. And I went there for 10 days, worked for 10 days straight, and saw about 11, 12 kids, something like that. And just throughout the whole, just worked, did my thing through the whole day. So it wound up being 7 years. We made 23, 24 trips out there,
Wow.
sometimes 5 or 6 a year.
Wow.
And we worked all over the place, worked in all through Ukraine, Poland, Latvia. I went to Latvia a lot, worked
And
in
these were disabled kids, right? They were all disabled kids.
all I'd say 90% were nonverbal and
Wow.
90% were non-ambulatory. So they weren't walkers or talkers,
Wow.
seizures, you name it, we saw it, and they were severely brain injured.
Did anyone document all that, please, Robert? Is there any paper trail of that work?
Yeah, we have some paper trails of that. Yeah, I did that for a long time, and that's what it really humbles you when you start working and thinking that I was going to be a sports chiropractor, and all of a sudden I'm starting treating all these kids.
Mhm.
Because you saw some kids in practice, but wasn't really could call it a pediatric practice.
Right.
But saw some kids. But
Right.
this kind of like God was directing me the way I feel about it,
Of
to see
course.
kids.
Right.
And then I started doing some. I was with Carl used to see the Orthodox community, which he introduced me to the community.
Right.
So when he became ill, he went for a catheterization up in Boston, actually,
Mhm.
at Yale University, because his two sisters are married to two medical doctors up there. So Carl was having some heart issues, and he went for catheterization. They stroked him out on the table in 2001.
Right.
Yep. Stroked him out. So I took over his practice in Brooklyn. Once every 2 weeks, then turned into once every week then. And a lot of Orthodox kids used to see, the Orthodox community from all over Brooklyn used to come in. He used to get patients in from Italy, from all over the place.
Yep.
Probably like Dijarnet did.
Yep.
And he would get all these calls, and all these people would come in to see him from all these other countries. So something was clicking with this. So I started working his practice, started seeing all these people. So then I started working the community, and then slowly surely I started working more with the community. And then I worked through different areas in Brooklyn. And then finally, one of my friends said, "You have to meet one of these Orthodox ladies, Razy Cohn in Williamsburg." And so I started going there. I said, "I'll probably be here once a month." Once a month turned into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It was like, and I had to cut it back a little bit. It was crazy. So
Yeah.
it just kept on blossoming and blossoming since I guess November 2016. So, and then as I said, I was working one day. I still remember the moment. It was 2018, end of 17, and pandemic wasn't here yet. But I realized that I was doing this, but still starting to hit a wall again. I wasn't getting the results. And then one day I just was home. I remember it's on Facebook, and then that guy popped up, and and I says, "Wow,
This guy.
that guy popped up, Marty Rosen." I said, "What the hell's this?" And so he's doing pediatrics and SOT, and it got my brain going again. And I looked at it, read it, and saw the cranial work, and because I knew about it. I mean, Carl's in NOT, there's a lot of cranial work, but not as in depth as Marty's taken, Dijarnet's work. And I said, "This is something I have to do." And I miss, the rest of the story, that I called, I procrastinated. I called, got on the waiting list. And then when I was in DC visiting my daughter out at Starbucks having a cup of coffee, this lady, Nancy, called me and said, "You're number one on the list." And then the rest was history of taking that. And it's been since that 2018 seminar, the practice has blossomed beyond belief, belief. And it taught me that, as much, in advertising in the 80s, you're talking about now in the 80s,
Right.
you're doing $700, $800 in advertising for the phone book. You're sending out flyers. You're doing lectures.
Sure.
You're doing this. You're doing that. And I found like that, like, what was I doing? Because people just wanted to come in and get results.
Mhm.
They wanted results, no matter what you put out there.
People always say, what I love about your story, and we were just, we have this with a lot of people we do in the vitality chats, especially in the practice for long times, how they keep reinventing themselves, how it's an internal mechanism that allows you to reinvent yourself. And again, the other piece around that is to be able to, to take the hit, to have faith that, yeah, so you went from 80 to 100 patient visits a day, to let's say 15 patients a visit a day, which had to be quite a hit financially,
It was amazing.
and to be able to stay focused in that and to realize that there's something else calling you and be, to be willing to go through that hard time, it's like relationship, to be willing to go through that hard time to come out that other side. I love stories like that. I love to see
There's
things like
something
that.
else that really rings true for me, Robert. It's like, so one of the things we ask is, how do you stay motivated? Well, it's very clear you stay motivated because you are results oriented. So the truth for you is you're taking care of these people, and they have gotten more complicated. The cases are more complicated. So what
People are sicker now.
people are sicker. And to stay motivated and to be true to yourself is, if you're not getting the results, what do you need to get the results? What are you missing in your toolbox? And I feel like honoring that, like some of the doctors we talked to have been in practice over 40 years, the thing that really drives them is being able to help people. It's like when they come in and they're suffering and they're no longer suffering. And certainly that's true for pediatrics. You're changing the course of a child's life without really knowing what you're doing, but knowing that, having them be able to, feed or whatever their issue is, like, that the course of their life will have more ease in it. So I really, really want to honor that part of what I hear you saying, is like, you're being really true to, like, I'm at a wall. What more do I need? It's not like you didn't shy away or try to sell something that you weren't delivering, because
Or lower your standards,
or
which is another big.
exactly. I feel like sometimes we lie to ourselves, and it's that being true to ourselves is saying, no, I know I can do more. And I'm really grateful that you found us, because you're just
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great for both of us.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
not you, but as well as,
Yeah.
just it, to see someone who's been in practice that long and to still be excited and motivated, it motivates us. I mean, I need stuff like that too. I mean, not just in my practice, but when I teach, to hear the stories of how it affects people's life, like hearing what you say, how it's moved your practice the next level, hearing how people, and that's how, I got tuned into a DJarnet. There was always more to learn. And every time I felt like I hit a plateau, I could just dive back in. And find something else to move the next level and move the next level. I think it's important.
And sometimes, like, when we teach younger students that maybe have been in practice 5 years, they think there is a stopping point. Like, oh, I got this certificate, or I got this diploma. I took this series, and that's great. And it's awesome. And then incorporate that and move on. But we're all into building the toolboxes, to having a lot more at your fingertips if you need it, because the journey is long. You don't know what's going to come on your door, and it's best to be prepared. And if you're not prepared, to be honest with yourself, like, don't sell something that you're not delivering. So I think that's a really big message that I'm hearing you saying, Robert. It's just, your depth of experiences, the people that you've been able to take care of, that most of us will never have seen. It's really a remarkable story.
Well, I found in working with the kids in Eastern Europe, we in the United States, you don't see populations like this, because they're in big buildings that are babysitter buildings, that they just babysit these kids morning, noon, and night, and they never get to see. They get physical therapy, they get this, they get that, they get playtime, but they never get to a chiropractor. So seeing this population, in fact, Phyllis used to tell Bojana all the time, why are you seeing this population? You're setting yourself up for failure. What are you doing? You're not going to get this. Why do you do this? So she says, because I love what I do, and these kids are left to die. That was her answer. So I would go to bed at night and say, honestly, I'd say, what the hell am I doing here? I says, I don't know what God brought me here for, but I just have to get up every morning and do this. And it wasn't that you were getting these great results. Some of the results, the kids would hold their head straight. Some of the kids, their eyes would look at their parents. Some of the kids and the biggest thing was they were pooping. Those are the first two questions in the morning. First two questions. Number one, how long? Which meant how long did they sleep? And these kids weren't sleeping at all. Second question, how many times? How many times did they poop? So they went from pooping once every 2 or 3 weeks, and what they would do to get these kids to poop, you would not believe it. And so they started pooping and sleeping like there was no tomorrow. So you just those little tiny things, it kept on motivating me to get up and learn more and do more. Those, as I always said, those kids taught me a hell of a lot more
Sure.
than I think I was able to help them to teach me that, listen, you better leave your ego at home and just go do the work from 7:20 in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, lectures to 10:30, and go to bed and do the same thing the next day. And I'm working 16, 17, 18 hours a day. We weren't there to enjoy ourselves, just to go work and do what we need to do. But it really humbled me in the fact of like, listen, you better leave your ego home. Don't bring it here, because it's going to smack you in the face or put you down, cut you off at your knees.
But
So
I think it's really important to be able to look at those little things. Bobby Dosha, who runs Oakhaven, who deals with a lot of damaged children, also always says, like, the look in their eyes. You see light come in their eyes. Even they're able to track, these little things that seem little are huge in their lives, and it's a sign of their nervous system healing. It's like, when you talk about results, like, what's the result? Guy gets carried into your office and walks out. Okay, that's a great result. And then 2 days later, they decide, never to come back again until they blow out their back again.
Right.
As opposed to turning on, literally turning on the life force in these people. And not having your expectation, like, this kid's not going to get up and walk and talk over to me, but maybe he'll be able to look at his parents, feel the love, and go to the bathroom once in a while. And that's huge in their life, right. And it's kind of what we take for granted when we practice in our offices, when you see these little things. And Bobby, I remember talking to one time, said it's really important that we point this out to the parent, because then they understand what's happening with the kid. And obviously they'll be willing to stay longer for care, because they really understand that you're healing their nervous system. Whatever that looks like, however that manifests for somebody, can be different from one person to the other.
Yeah, well, it was funny because it took, but my friend Bojana didn't tell me what happened with Yunya for 2 years.
Right.
And she was doing a lecture, and she said, Robert went and did all this bing bang stuff in her mouth and all this. I don't know what he was doing, but we went to lunch that day, and we were able to take the spoon out of Yunya's mouth.
That's huge.
And I said to her after the lecture, I says, I don't want to say what I exactly said to her. It's not nice, but I said, "Are you kidding?" She goes, "I just didn't want to give you a big head. So just go back, go take your nap like you're supposed to, and get ready for work again this afternoon. Okay? Remember, you're as good as what you did the last patient. So, the next one, didn't matter what you did, just get to work on the next one." So,
Robert, your story is inspiring. Your life is inspiring, and we're really grateful that you came to share this with us. Is there like one little message they'd like to give to like people that are starting out? What you could share now of what that maybe makes their journey a little bit easier?
Well, I was thinking about that. One was Yunya with the spoon, but when I started chiropractic school, prior to that, I suffered about 6 concussions. I was knocked out twice, literally one for about 45 minutes. And I always had a problem in school learning, always did, remembering things, studying, and I don't even know how I got through high school, to tell you the truth, or got through college, to say the least. I fell in love with the sphenoid bone when I was a sophomore in college, and I always remembered, I don't know what it was, but I loved the bone. I don't know what it was, and that's true. So I studied it, and of course, chiropractic school came along, and so it's first quarter, got all these classes, and I'm looking at my book, and I'm reading, and I can't, nothing's sinking in. The cat's green. I said to myself, what color is the cat? I don't know. I don't remember. So anyway, I was studying anatomy, whatever. I was doing osteology with Dr. Strang. Could not remember anything. Call my student doctor up, Fred Smith. I call his wife, Beth. I says, Beth, Freddie home yet? She says, no, he's still at clinic, but he'll be home in a little bit. I says, can I come up? Because I'm having a problem. So I went up there on Pershing in Davenport, Iowa, sat in her apartment, talked to her for a while. Fred came home, had his table in the house, put me on the table, did a lumbar roll one side, L5 the other side. He adjusted C2 and maybe C5, C5 on the left, C2 on the right, whatever. I still remember coming home. I came home, my apartment. I walked down to my apartment. My bed was still on the floor because I didn't have a frame yet for the bed. And I fell asleep like a rock for 2 hours, like a rock. I woke up. It was like in a daze. I ate a sandwich and I says, I have to study. I started studying, and all of a sudden I could remember things.
Yeah.
I could actually remember. I said, oh my God, I could actually remember what I'm reading and comprehend what I'm reading. And so I could not believe it. It's like, what happened? It's just like I could not believe it. And the last one was Dr. Schmidel. When I went, he was teaching us PNS and CNS, nervous system. And I went to see him. I had a fever, probably 112 degrees. He adjusted me, let me lay on the table. I walked out with no fever. I felt great. I had color in my face. My friend Chris Kastner says to me, what the hell happened to you? I says, I don't know. He did these adjustments, let me lay there. All the stuff came out. And I says, let's go. We were going to go on the Mississippi River that day in a little raft and drink some beer. And those two experiences, I still remember like it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So I was really inspired at that moment, tremendously. And my last story is bringing to me to my motivation of things. I dislocated my right hip playing high school football. They put me in a body cast in the hospital. And one of the orderlies came in, African-American guy. So he wrote on my cast and took his big marker and he wrote on my cast because my cast was pretty much my whole body at that point because they put me in a body cast. He wrote, drive, 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 never give up, never give up, never give up, he said to me.
Nice.
So I always think of those times and what motivated me to keep on going.
Sure.
And I think in a young practitioner or, even somebody's been in practice for 10 or 15 years, when things look bleak, it's a sign that you need to start opening up to things and opening up to whatever comes in and pay attention to what comes in. Because those experiences, meeting Dr. Ferrari, learning the NOT, kinesiology, Dr. Goodhart, Marty in 2018, those are very significant parts in your life that I could have just said, oh, I'm on a waiting list, screw that, and go out to Brooklyn. What do I want to go out to Brooklyn for? It takes me too long to get out there. Sure. I don't want to go there. Or whatever. I mean, you're not going to see George that day up in Belleville, New Jersey, and say, Dad, forget about it. Screw it. I don't want to do that.
It's the little things of keeping yourself open.
Yes, but you never know.
And showing up and saying yes to things.
Yeah.
Yes, just saying yes and really seeing what happens because we don't know what's going to happen, and it really directs your life. Yeah. So those significant parts of my life, especially with Marty at this point in time, and you, Nancy, has been a godsend.
Well, thank you, Robert.
That's awesome, Robert.
We really appreciate you joining us
thank you for
today.
sharing your expertise, your wisdom, and your passion.
And your
I really appreciate it.
Yep. Keep on going. Drive. Keep on going.
Right. And have a good day, Robert.
Thanks,
guys.
Bye-bye.